of Mother Jones documented several instances of BP actually barring photography of dead animals on public beaches. I received 2 first-hand accounts indicating that some sort of processing operation was taking place. One from Alabama, a rig operator contacted to work in an abandoned naval yard was his contact there, and one on Grand Isle, Louisiana, both reporting the construction of a highly secured, nearly militarized ports that had been converted into, quote, waste processing areas. Now, I've played audio clips in some of the previous ones on this Gulf where we had guys that were in Grand Isle, and they were saying how super secret and how everybody was so tight-lipped, and there were certain large areas where they couldn't even drive their car. I mean, what were they trying to hide? It really wouldn't make sense if they were just trying to do the cleanup effort of the oil, and they wouldn't want you to see that. You'd think they'd want you to see that. Hey, look, we're working hard. But if it was dead animals, it would make a lot more sense. They wouldn't want anybody to see that because they can get fined, and it's also very, very bad PR for them. He goes on to say, then I got an email with some interesting photos that were uploaded to Citizen Global, a crowdsourcing news platform, on their Gulf News desk. Now, there's a lot of photos that go along with this report. I did post some of them in the PDF that I will be posting with this study, but there's also a lot of links you can click on if you want to explore this further. And again, you can get this on contendingfortruth.com. The PDF will be associated with the study for today. Then he goes on to say it was a first-hand account by an individual working in the Gulf who reported receiving unconfirmed confidential reports that BP is withholding information about fish kills, including that of sperm whales, whale sharks, bluefin tuna, and other marine animals. Following up on these leads, recently I flew over the staging areas where the reports allege that BP has been engaged in these secretive operations. What I saw from air over Shell Beach and Hopsdale, Louisiana, was that there seemed to be military projected staging areas where whales could potentially be brought in from offshore, processed under huge white tents, and then carted off in trash trucks owned by a collaborative of oil companies, including BP. I'm deeply concerned that BP has the power to put in place restrictions on access areas to certain areas of ever-growing BP drilling disaster locations, and will continue advocating for a change in this policy. A team of journalists, including Jerry Cope of the Huffington Post and Charles Hamble, co-producer of the Academy Award-winning documentary The Cove, went down to the region to investigate. They had some interesting findings to report and got some great interviews with locals on the mystery of the disappearing dead animals. Most notable was their finding that some municipal dumps have been secured by law enforcement officials in the area, and several individuals reported the dumping of bags of full rotting carcasses. You might be wondering about the motive. Sure, BP wanted to keep the full gruesome reality of their toxic nightmare out of the press as much as possible. But was that enough to motivate to warrant such a massive and expensive operation? Probably not. A greater incentive may have been the fines the company would have incurred if the correct number of dead carcasses had been tallied and verified. At $50,000 a pop, hundreds of thousands of dead animals could spell bankruptcy for BP. Now, there's a link to the $50,000. There's a reason they put that in there. And that's something that no one, including the U.S. government, would have wanted to happen. So again, you follow the money. Let's see. Jerry Cope and his team spent 2 days flying over the Gulf, and from what he has seen, the whole Gulf is a strange greenish color, with nothing moving. Wildlife is virtually non-existent. This would indicate that not only are thousands of people sick, but a vast amount of wildlife throughout the Gulf has either been killed or left crippled. Corporate news has enthusiastically declared that 75% of the oil has dissipated. This criminally negligent report on the part of these so-called news outlets must not go unpunished. The media is supposed to play an important part in our society by providing checks and balances. Well, we all know that's a joke, but maybe at one time it was the case, but not now. Or at least to a certain extent it was the case. When they fail to do so, not only are they failing at their job, they're jeopardizing the lives of thousands. So they undergo this massive, gigantic cleanup effort to skim the surface of the waters to get rid of all these dead animal carcasses. This is most likely why they locked down the Gulf. then what they do is they're spraying dispersants sometimes night and day over where the oil's coming up so they can sink the oil and hide it that way. And then a lot of times what they do is if it gets up on the beach, they just plow more beach over it so that it looks like a white sandy beach, but underneath it is all oil. So these are the things that they're doing in order to regarding this cover-up. So let's go further here. Meanwhile, in Louisiana, a dive team has found oil under their feet. That's right. In a scene similar to the beaches around Exxon Valdez, oil has been filmed spewing out from underneath the beach. And again, that would make sense if they had actually put it under, plowed it over with sand. Oil companies using their corporate puppets in the mainstream news have been documented leaving the spill-infected areas to basically rot, while at the same time publicly declaring that they did everything possible in their cleanup efforts. Their cleanup efforts were beyond a joke from the very beginning. And again, their cleanup efforts were essentially Corexit 9500. Spraying it, sink the oil, which what it does is not only does it create gigantic undersea kill zones, but you're robbing the oxygen out of the water and you're creating this chemically toxic soup. And another thing that it does is, remember how we had talked about in times past where they were using enzymes to clean up these oils? Or these microorganisms, microbes? Well, guess what? The microbes don't work when you use the Corexit, because the Corexit kills the microbes. If it was just oil, and they would have used those microbes to begin with, they could have got the oil just from that alone. They never did it. They used Corexit, which would kill all the microbes. So, everything they could have done to botch this, they did, it seems. People need to understand this. The oil has not been dissipated. The stated purpose of the Corexit 9500 and other dispersants of the same nature is to push the oil under the water. In fact, Professor Ian McDonald of Florida State University has gone on record stating that 40 to 45% of the oil is currently caught up in the underwater plumes. Every day it looks more and more like Agenda 21 is playing out before our eyes. This is the depopulation agenda. The plan is to kill 80% of the world's population has been put into overdrive, and the Gulf being a major part of that overall plan. Now, we're going to be talking a lot about this in this study and in the next study, where I'm going to discuss a lot on what they're doing to the food and the water to kill us. I mean, it's getting so flagrantly obvious, and the vaccines. It's getting so flagrantly obvious, I can't even hardly believe what I'm seeing in front of me.